Okay, part 2 of chapter 5, or what I'm calling part 2, starting with page 127 in communicative instructional settings. We talked about a classroom that has the group work going and presentations, and I even said reading, writing, and listening. Pictures are very useful in a communicative setting where students can describe the picture or tell the story. There could be like a series of pictures. When we teach English, pictures can be useful, especially at the lower levels, to describe emotions and colors, adjectives and verbs, and obviously pictures are going to be useful for that, and gestures, a lot of body language. Sometimes ESL teachers are compared to actors or performers because they're using so much body language, and it's kind of like the art of communication. A lot of clarification, I didn't understand you, can you say that again? And negotiation of meaning, like I think you said this, or can you be more specific? And of course the teacher is talking to the students, but then the students also are talking to each other. And if you think about it, in terms of a student having the opportunity to speak, working in groups gives the students so much more opportunities to speak than simply when the students are answering questions from the teacher. I've had students complain though and say, I don't like working in groups because we're all making the same mistakes and we can't correct each other. It's wasting our time, we just want you to lecture, we just want you to teach us everything. But I think they don't realize the value of being able to at least try to express themselves in group work. Maybe over time, they kind of understand that. But just statistically, there's going to be such a higher percentage of speaking if the students can work in groups. And, I, as a teacher, I don't even hear what goes on in a lot of the groups because as I walk around, I don't even know sometimes, I don't even hear what they're saying, and sometimes the students are frustrated by that, like, how can you correct me if you can't even hear me? But again, it's just putting them in that situation. And they'll say, like, I'm picking up bad habits, or I'm picking up the wrong pronunciation from this other student, but I wouldn't really say that's necessarily true. The immersion programs, like we had talked about, a lot of other countries now, they'll have English-speaking schools so that their kids can do their whole day of school in English, or it could be another language as well. You may end up teaching art or teaching biology in another country in English, and then that would be another way to teach English, actually. And that's opening up more and more. We talked about role plays. In a role play, what's interesting is you start getting into some socio-linguistic aspects, like being polite, expressing anger, complaining about something, or being really informal, apologizing. And with a role play, almost like drama, you can get not just the language, but the intonation and the surprise and the body language. Kind of brings in like all aspects of language. Going to the observational schemes on page 129, we're just trying to define that when you watch an ESL classroom, kind of what are you looking for when you observe it, and how can you analyze it? And you think about, okay, how much time does the teacher talk versus the students? What type of questions is the teacher asking? How is the teacher handling, grammar, correcting errors? And you go in to observe that. Another perspective on it would be the ethnography type observation, which is where you would go in with kind of no preconceptions, no expectations. You're not going to judge the teacher. You're just going to go and kind of see what's happening. Similar to like an anthropologist who goes to a culture and is just kind of observing the culture and taking it all in, obviously without prejudging, whether this culture is strange or not. Most of what we do with observations, though, mainly we're looking for specific things. we're looking how much the teacher focuses on form versus maybe just meaning. And if the students are very controlled with the language they can use, or if there's sort of some free speaking involved, and as I mentioned, teacher asking questions, teacher setting up small groups, and responding to errors. I find one thing with observations that I think is kind of frustrating is that when you go to a classroom, you're seeing a lesson maybe for an hour, a couple hours, but really you haven't really seen like what went on before that lesson. And in terms of the class dynamics, the teacher maybe has tried certain things that didn't work, so now they're trying other ways. So really, to kind of judge a class, I think it's more fair, if you could see maybe the whole course, or if you understood like the whole program, and how this course fits into this whole program of reading, writing, speaking, listening, electives. And that might be, more fair to judge a teacher based on not just what happened like during that hour. Of course, I think you can, I guess to be fair, you can pick up the teacher's style and the atmosphere of the room and somewhat the effectiveness of the teacher, but I wouldn't really jump to judge like how effective that teacher is or how that lesson is just from that one lesson. But obviously observing classes is going to be one of the best ways to get a feel for what you want to do in the classroom.